For decades, the case did not have one name. In one file, the suspect was the Visalia Ransacker. In another, he was the East Area Rapist. Later, investigators used the name original Night Stalker. The public would eventually know him as the Golden State Killer. The names mattered because the records were separated by time, geography, and jurisdiction. Burglaries in one California community, attacks in another, and murders farther south did not immediately look like one public case file. They looked like separate folders handled by separate agencies in separate years. The public record now tells a different story. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was a former California police officer. Prosecutors said his crimes began while he was working for the Exeter Police Department, and continued long after he was fired from the Auburn Police Department in 1979. The conduct admitted in court covered a broad pattern: stalking, break-ins, sexual assaults, kidnappings to commit robbery, and murders. This video will not recreate those attacks. The record is serious enough without staging violence. The important story is how a series of files that sat unresolved for decades finally moved through science, genealogy, prosecution, and a public courtroom. In 2016, the FBI and California law enforcement renewed the public campaign. They announced a $50,000 reward and asked the public to look again at the East Area Rapist and Golden State Killer case. At that time, authorities described a violent offender connected to approximately 45 rapes, 12 homicides, and many residential burglaries across California. The campaign was not just a media event. It showed how much of the case still depended on memory, old records, and biological evidence saved before modern tools existed. Investigators had DNA from crime scenes, but DNA by itself did not name a person. It could include or exclude a suspect. It could connect scenes, it could wait. In 2018, investigators identified DeAngelo through investigative genetic genealogy. A DNA profile was uploaded to a public genealogy database, GED match, and investigators built a family tree lead that eventually pointed toward DeAngelo. After decades of separate names and separate case files, the investigation had one living suspect. DeAngelo was arrested on April 24, 2018. 2 years later, on June 29, 2020, the case moved into a public plea proceeding. DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and 13 counts of kidnapping to commit robbery. He also admitted to 161 uncharged crimes involving 61 additional victims. Prosecutors said the combined record accounted for 87 individual victims and 53 separate crime scenes across 11 California counties. Those numbers are not there to create spectacle. They explain why the prosecution was unusually large, why multiple counties worked together, and why the plea was treated as a public reckoning instead of a routine hearing. The six-county prosecution involved Contra Costa, Orange, Sacramento, Santa Barbara, Tulare, and Ventura counties. Prosecutors said the decision to accept the plea was made after considering the age of victims, witnesses, and the defendant, the death of key witnesses, and the burden that a trial expected to last years could place on survivors and families. The plea also created a record. It made DeAngelo say guilty again and again for charged murders and kidnappings. It made him acknowledge conduct that could no longer be fully prosecuted because of time limits, missing witnesses, and the age of the case. On August 21, 2020, Joseph James DeAngelo was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence included 11 consecutive life terms without parole, an additional consecutive life term, and 8 years. The practical result was final. He would die in prison. The Golden State Killer case is often remembered for the arrest, but its public importance is wider than one suspect. It is a case about records that outlived fear. It is about county files, old evidence boxes, lab work, family trees, survivor testimony, and the limits of the criminal justice system when time has already taken so much away. It is also a warning about how AI reconstructions should be used. The images in this video are not historical footage. They are visual reconstructions of public record spaces, file rooms, courtrooms, evidence tables, and hearing rooms. The real record is in the sources, the plea, the sentencing, and the words spoken in court. For years, the case had many names because no single file could hold the whole truth. In the end, the court record did what the names could not.